Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a language that completely flips the idea of creation on its head. It's called CLACL. And with it, you don't just draw things, you design the actual rules that bring entire worlds into existence.
I mean, just look at this. Could you draw this by hand? No way. The sheer complexity with every single piece being unique but still part of a whole. It's just mind-boggling. So how in the world do you create something like this? Something that feels, alive. That's the exact problem that generative design was born to solve.
And that leads us to the big, mind-bending question. What if, instead of struggling with the final object, you could just design its DNA, the fundamental rules that guide its growth? Well, that's exactly what CLACL is all about. And trust me, it's a total game changer.
Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts of how this actually works. The very first thing you need to understand is that CLACL is not a drawing tool. We're not talking about placing points or dragging lines around. Nope. This is all about defining a strategy, a logical recipe for building your final design. The name CLACL is an acronym for a fancy Italian phrase, Composizione Logica Assisted dal Computer, but the key word you really need to hang on to is logical. We're shifting our brains away from thinking about where things are, and instead we're going to focus on how they're all connected and related to one another. So to do that, you get a pretty awesome set of tools. Think of these as your new superpowers. You've got for, which is basically your copy-paste on steroids. You have random for adding that beautiful organic messiness. And then you have two really smart ways to make decisions. Test, which is an amazing trial and error tool we'll get to in a sec, and case, which lets the system make choices on the fly. Let's see how they work. All right, first up is probably the simplest, but maybe the most powerful tool in the whole box, repetition. This is how we go from creating just one thing to creating 1,000, all from a single rule. So, it all starts with just one simple command. We type /a, and boom, one single entity pops into existence. That's our seed, our starting block. Now, watch this. We take that one little command and we wrap it inside what's called a for loop. All we're doing is telling the computer, hey, do that thing again and again, 100 times. And just like that, our one entity becomes 100, all laid out in a perfect, orderly grid.
But let's be honest, perfect grids are a little boring, right? Little sterile. This is where it gets really cool. We add just one word to our code, random, and suddenly, that rigid grid just comes alive. Every point shifts just a tiny bit, and what you get is this beautiful organic texture. We've gone from perfect order to natural variation with a single word.
Repetition is awesome, for sure. But this next tool, this is where CLACL gets seriously smart. We're about to give our design process a brain. We're going to let it experiment, let it fail, and let it learn from its own mistakes.
Say hello to the test command. The best way to think about this is like a try and backtrack system. The computer provisionally, sort of temporarily, creates something, then it checks it against a rule you've set. If it doesn't pass the test, the system just erases it and goes back to how things were a second ago. It's like it never happened. Only the successful attempts get to survive. So why is that so powerful? Well, think about this situation from the source material. Imagine you want to build a square between 2 points, but only if they're close enough together. The problem is, you can't know if they're close enough until you've actually created them. The test command lets you create them in a sort of ghost mode first, check the distance, and then decide if you want to keep them. This example makes it crystal clear. Let's say we want to build a tower, but our rule is it has to be taller than 3 units. Okay, so first, the system just tries building one randomly. Then it checks, is this tower's height greater than 3? Let's say it's not. Well, poof, it's gone, instantly erased. The system just backtracks and tries again with new random numbers. And it keeps doing this, try, fail, erase, try again, until finally it builds a tower that passes the test. That's the one that gets to stay. It's literally geometric natural selection happening right on your screen. So what happens when you start putting all these incredible tools together? When you combine mass repetition with a dash of randomness and this super intelligent trial and error process? Well, that's when you go from simple rules to breathtaking complexity.
You know, the source material says it perfectly. It says that this ability to experiment is what makes the system feel creative because it leads to innumerable and unforeseen compositions. And that's the beautiful paradox here. By using these very strict logical rules, you end up unlocking a universe of creativity you never could have planned.
And this right here really drives a whole point home. On the left, you've got a handful of lines of code. It's just a loop with a test inside. And on the right, that's what it creates. This vast, intricate cosmos of a design that would be absolutely impossible to create piece by piece. That's the power you get when you design the system, not just the object.
So, what does this all mean for the designer, for the creator? Well, it fundamentally changes your role. You're not just a draftsman anymore. You're more like a systems architect, a choreographer of logic, a cultivator of a digital ecosystem. So let's just quickly recap the toolkit we've been talking about. You've got for loops to turn one idea into a million, the random qualifier to breathe life and variation into them, and the test command to give your creations a mind of their own, to let them evolve toward a goal. These are the true building blocks for generative design.
The real magic here, the secret sauce, is this partnership between human intuition and the raw power of the computer. Your creativity isn't being replaced, it's being amplified, massively. You come up with the DNA, the core logical rules, and the machine does the tireless work of exploring every single possibility at a scale you could never, ever do on your own.
And really, that's the final thought to leave you with. Tools like CLACL are showing us that the future of design isn't really about meticulously drawing every single line. It's about writing the fundamental laws of new, unexpected, and beautiful universes.